if they have a caring adult, if they have somebody that has their back, if they trust that that person is not just there to teach them what is explicitly part of the curriculum, but also to support them with the challenges that they come across, I think that makes the world a difference.
In this video, you'll meet Michael Fellin, who's the headmaster of Crescent School in Toronto, Ontario. And in this video, you'll hear him explain why he's so passionate about all boys education. You'll hear him talk about how all boys at schools and all girls schools have become much more progressive over the years against their reputation for being quite traditional. And you'll also hear him talk about how the school develops a full boy academically, socially, and as well as making sure they have a strong emotional health. Start by you telling us 3 things that you love about your job.
Well, I grew up in a boys' school, so and I've been in boys' schools my entire life. So probably the thing that I love most about my job is I get to be around boys pretty regularly and to facilitate their learning and their character education. I get to be around amazing colleagues who are interested in the same thing, people who are really focused on boys and their needs. Feel very blessed to be with people who are that like-minded and that devoted to boys education. And I happen to just be, again, grateful for the fact that the school is not too far from where I live. And so we think about ourselves very much as a school within a community. And we're deepening relationships with members of our community. And so, for me, it's about working with, encouraging our boys, bumping into people when I'm out and about buying groceries or even being with my own family. So those are some of the things that I love best about Crescent School.
And so you have a long history of boys education from your own experience and then now professionally. How has your concept of an all boys education changed over the course of maybe when you were a student and now when you are a headmaster?
Yeah, probably some things have changed and some things remain the same. I think that, for me, I was blessed to go to a school that helped me realize myself and what I was potentially capable of doing in the world. And I found my voice, I found my calling, and I, really discovered the importance of education and specifically the power of relational teachers. I think for me, that was the big difference maker of my own education. I went to a school probably because I wanted to play hockey and wanted to just be around some friends and whatnot. And that just grew over time. And I ended up obviously doing a lot more than that at school and have forged relationships and friendships for a lifetime, both with friends and with former teachers. So, I think that that experience really shaped the way that I thought about myself and thought about the importance of me giving back to the world and to other kids, So for me, it's all about, what did I benefit from and how can I do a small part to impart that back onto other families and other boys. And so that's, I think, probably the things that haven't changed. I think Crescent is very much a similar place in terms of fostering relationships, creating experiences where boys can discover their identity, their giftedness, their talent, their promise in our case. And probably the things that have changed, the world is so different, I not that old, but old enough now to look back and say, it's far harder today to be a student in school than it ever was. I never had to really worry too much about overall averages and the pressure to get into university and the need to perform on a daily basis. These pressures are very, very real for kids now who are trying to balance it all, trying to get into very competitive university programs, trying to get into very competitive work environments. They're probably sleeping less than we did in the past. They're managing so many more responsibilities. And so I think it's as a result, school is very different. You know, we have people in school who are trying to respond to a variety of needs that kids have, you know, that are both scholastic and social emotional and sort of on that spectrum, and everything in between. And so I think schools today are filled with many more people who have different levels of expertise, who are here as supports for boys, as I say, both inside and outside of the classroom. And I would say that's a fundamental shift in education. Again, 25 years ago, these supports were not in place. It was by and large schools filled with teachers. Now there's, you know, social workers and learning support specialists and nurses and, you know, all of these amazing people. So those are some thoughts on what's changed and what has stayed the same.
You bring up some really amazing points about the social pressures, emotional pressures, as well as academic pressures that are on students today. How do you think a boys' environment in a school helps students deal with these added pressures? How is this kind of same-sex environment at Crescent School or other all-boys schools prepare them to deal with these added pressures and challenges?
I think it starts with the staff and the faculty. And, you know, there was a very significant study about boys' education a number of years ago. And in part, it was conducted as a global study in all sorts of cities around the world, in every different type of school for boys, whether it was a private or a public school, an urban, rural setting. And what ultimately it concluded was that the single most important factor in whether a boy will learn or not is the relationship with the teacher. And so that relationship is transitive in terms of whether learning will occur or whether learning will not occur. And so, you know, boys and young people in general have all of these challenges that they have to face. But, you know, if they have a caring adult, if they have somebody that has their back, if they trust that person is not just there to teach them what is explicitly part of the curriculum, but also to support them with the challenges that they come across, I think that makes the world a difference. One of the things here that we're most proud of is our mentor group. And so every boy in the school is attached to an advisory group, a mentor group we call it, that has one or two, depending on the size of the group, caring adults. And so these groups that are mixed with different boys from different grades, they meet regularly throughout the year, and these become forums by which boys can get advice from other boys if they're older, and also have somebody that they can turn to if they encounter something in their life at school or even outside of school that they're really struggling with, wrestling with, grappling with. And I think it's so important in schools today that kids have at least one, hopefully a lot more, but at least one caring adult that they can turn to, that as I say, that from their perspective, that teacher, that staff person understands who I am, cares for me deeply, and will be here to assist. So it's so hard to in some ways, you know, quantify all of the needs that our boys face, because, you know, again, they're coming from so many different backgrounds, different parts of the city. But if they have that person, that trusted adult to turn to in moments of need, I think that is so important for schools.
So earlier in I think your first answer, you mentioned the phrase relational teachers. Is that what you mean by teachers who have relationships that go beyond teacher student? It's adult and adolescent child that shows that they have a vested interest in beyond an academic performance.
That's right. And so people who themselves think about school and think about learning in a relational manner. And so these people typically exhibit similar characteristics. They use humor effectively. They are vulnerable. They are accessible outside of the classroom. They have a supportive mindset and approach. They also, interestingly, hold students to very high standards. These are the sort of relational gestures that this study revealed. And for us at school, we use these dispositions when we interview potential candidates for employment. And so for us, and for me in particular, yes, I want to know that a person is a trained teacher and that they know the curriculum and they have a certain capacity and a methodology in which they can ensure that learning happens in the classroom. But I want to know much more about who they are, what they stand for, how they were raised, how they approach the relationships with their students, because there's a difference between skill and just human quality and those dispositions that we see here as so fundamental to how boys will forge a deep relationship, professional relationship, but a deep relationship with their teacher, their coach, their drama leader, whoever it is, and whatever program they're involved in at the school. Relational learning is fundamental to the way boys approach school.
And in terms of the students at Crescent, do you see them starting at grade 3 and continuing all the way through grade 12? Or are there targeted years that you feel students and families come to Crescent for different reasons?
Yeah, it's such a personal family decision. We have a rolling admission process. So we have boys that come in grade 3. We have another batch of boys that come in grade 5, as well in grade 7, and then the final group of boys come in at grade 9. And so it builds sort of consecutively. So 20 boys, generally speaking, at a time, eventually leads to a class, a grade group in the upper school and the high school of about 100 students. So by the time a student shows up in grade 9, whether because they've been here since grade 3 or they're arriving, as a new student in grade 9, they will experience a student class cohort of 100 students, and that's effectively what we graduate each year.
And is there much integration across the grades and across the early, middle, high school years? And how does Crescent create a sense of community and life when the school spans ages like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you were to come into the school, you would see these murals that have been painted by the boys, and they feature different backdrops, but a common word, and that is brotherhood. So the boys talk about themselves as brothers. They look up to the older boys, and they very much interact with them throughout the course of the day in formal ways and informal ways. It's really hard to walk through the school. It's a bit of a maze without bumping into other people in other divisions. But we have all sorts of formal activities. We have house activities. When a boy comes to the school, they're put into a house, one of 6 houses, and that house group is a 3 to 12 grouping. And so we, at various points of the year, we have house activities that some are athletic, some are scholastic, and it all leads up to a house cup at the end of the year. We have boys in the upper school who serve in formal leadership positions as within the house or even outside of the house as prefects. And part of their job is to actually facilitate interactions with older boys and younger boys in each of the 3 schools. So it happens, on a daily basis in all sorts of different ways. It wouldn't be uncommon for you to see, if you were to come in, that there'd be older boys who are on a spare. They would actually find their way into a class of a student in our lower school and just pop in and visit. It's amazing to see the relationships within among the boys and within their peer groups themselves.
And is there a type of student or boy that wouldn't be a good fit at Crescent or wouldn't excel in the way that you want your students to excel?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's so important that parents really understand their sons, their strengths, their needs, and then I think look for a school to sort of match and align with those things. And so, we are an academically rigorous school. So all of our boys, upon graduation, go to university. So I happen to believe that's a viable track for any student if they're committed to that pathway, and that obviously it takes a village for that to happen. So in one sense, we probably are not a place where if a student was, a bit older and they were immediately wanting to head out into the workforce after high school, that this wouldn't be the environment. This is, a different track, in terms of preparing boys for university. That said, it's a very well-rounded school. So we typically, we have programs where, outside of the classroom, outside of those scholastic commitments, we have boys who will be involved in multiple different programs. So we'll have, students who are on a sports team who are also in a drama production. We'll have students who are on a robotics team and also be involved in community outreach. And I would say that it's a busy place. It's not a school where you check in at 8:30 and you check out at 2:30. I think if that's what you were looking for, this wouldn't be the environment that I think would be the place for you. We have boys here sometimes as early as 7 o'clock, on the field in practices, and right through till 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So it can be a very full experience, and we think that's part of the difference. We think that's why parents choose our school for the fact that we can provide a high level quality education and a lot of extras outside of the classroom that then allow their boy to focus and their son to focus their time at school, as compared to driving them around from here, there, and everywhere, trying to piece it all together. So we think about ourselves as a academically rigorous environment that is also conducive to broad co-curricular participation.
Right. And you mentioned that families come to Crescent from across the city. Is there a thread that you find connects all of the families that are drawn to Crescent School?
Yeah, I think it's the mission. For me, I think people choose the school, or they should choose the school, because as parents and as a family, they align with what the school is endeavoring to do, why the school exists. So for us, our mission is Men of Character from Boys of Promise. It suggests that we exist to do something in addition to just graduating kids with a diploma. It suggests that in addition to learning all sorts of really important curriculum, they're going to discover their character and by virtue of that, commit to developing it for a lifetime. That to me is what I have heard over and over and over again from parents, that they chose the school because of the interest in the mission and because the values that we espouse, respect, responsibility, honesty, and compassion, are the values that align with what they are doing as a family, what they are committing to as a family. And let's face it, the way the world is right now, we need more alignment than ever between what I would call authoritative communities for young people. So that's the family, that's the home life, that's the school. And if the family happens to be involved in the community, whether that's a faith community or not, the more alignment that exists within those communities with the young person, student, boy, in our case, at the center, the more likely they are going to be successful, be happy, flourish in life. And the reverse is true. The more disconnect that exists between those places, the more mixed messages that young people get out in the world, I think it's a far greater risk to them in terms of their overall success and happiness. So I would say the piece that binds all of us and what draws people in to the partnership that again, it provides the foundation of a Crescent education.
And is there a level of expectation around family involvement in school life? Because as the working world as it is, they perhaps might be busy, probably both two incomes in a family. So are there ways to stay engaged that are flexible for families?
Yeah, we have an amazing parent community. It's called the Crescent Parent Association. It's filled with all sorts of wonderful people who themselves want to be proactively involved in the raising and the education of their sons. So again, it's one of these things that I think parents need to be looking for. We're not an environment where typically just you hand us your kid and then you pick them up when they're fully formed. That's not the way we think about schooling here. We think a Crescent education works best when there is a dynamic partnership between parents and teachers. So our approach is very open door. It's different in other places where sometimes parents don't have the same type of access. It would be highly uncommon for you to see in the normal course, and we're living through a period of abnormality right now, just with respect to all the health protocols in place. But in a regular case, we would be having parents volunteering in the school during the day, about the campus, after hours, coming to watch their son, coming at night for various events and activities. It's a place that really encourages parent involvement, parent communication. It's not uncommon for people like me to be out in homes in evenings, having meetings, having various receptions with parents to explain and to communicate and to draw people in more deeply into what we're trying to do as a school. So I would say it's a very, very active community in that sense.
How does Crescent approach handling miscommunications with families? Say if something arises between a student and a teacher, or perhaps just in general, how are communications maintained between the school and the family life?
So we have a platform that is multifaceted. So we have, everything from, a website, and then an internal, what we call green room, where a lot of information is housed that parents log into to receive. We push out a lot of information on a weekly basis. All parents would be receiving communication from their heads of school. I communicate regularly. I write a blog every month. We have all sorts of in-person events. I referred to them just earlier. We have, in the morning, we have something called Coffee and Conversations, where we invite parents in for coffee and conversation. And at night, we have cocktails and conversations. So I go out into homes of our parents, usually by grade group, and we continue those conversations. Could be related to our overall school strategy. They could be fundraising related. So I think there's a number of things that we do. It's not one sort of approach, but I would say the overall mindset of the school is guided by a simple question, and that is, how can I help? So we aspire to be very accessible, such that even in all of the things that we push out to parents, we want to create an environment, and we believe we have a community that basically people can pick up the phone, send me an email, and me or my team will get back to people. It's just the way we are here. And we want people to feel as if they have any questions, we're here to help.
And if Crescent was a person, what kind of personality traits would it have?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. The school was founded over 100 years ago as to be a place that was a kinder, gentler alternative to other big boy schools that were around at the time. Some of those schools still exist. And I would say that it goes back to the mission. So I think you would find that our boys are very respectful. They're kind. They care deeply about each other in their school. These sorts of very human qualities counterbalance the fact that they are also very bright, very capable, And so those are some of the qualities that I think of a Crescent student. You know, nothing pleases me more when I get notes from the community, and by and large, you know, they're always positive. Occasionally, you know, our boy, you know, if kids were perfect, you know, there wouldn't be a need for a school, perhaps. But occasionally, you know, schools exist to have corrective conversations, you know, with things. So don't get me wrong, when it's not always perfect, but nothing pleases me more when I get notes from the community, people that were riding a bus, people that had encountered one of our kids at a tournament. You know, from a visiting school, you know, if our kids go to another school and they're playing in a match or a game, and I get these notes, and I love to read those back to the staff and to the boys, because nothing pleases me more to hear that out in the community, our boys have a positive reputation. And we have a close affiliation, working relationship with some of our sister schools, and I would extend that to them. We often hear from them that our boys are the type of boys that their friends who are in girls' schools would associate with and would often be in company with. And that's, to me, very, very pleasing, because it suggests that out in the community, our boys are known to be of a certain type. And to me, that's what it's about. You know, it's, you know, being your character. It's great to say all the right things, but what does it mean when you're actually out in the world and you have to show up and things are difficult, or you're in a tricky situation? What will you do? How will you act when no one is watching? That's I think ultimately the test of your character.
And one final question. If you were in the position of parents who are looking at schools and their options right now, what's something that you would look out for that other families without your knowledge of the field might not think to pay particular attention to?
You know, it's interesting. I think that for many people, girls' schools or boys' schools may be thought of as a thing of the past. And I think it's a misconception. I think there have never been more progressive things happening in boys' schools and girls' schools than there are today. And I think that people would be surprised, I think, to see that it's anything but a traditional environment. I think that kids today have never been more connected than they are, that perhaps in the past, schools needed to be more coeducational because it was harder for them to connect with, you know, others outside of the school. It's just not true anymore. Kids connect in and are connected almost by the second. And so, you know, we think it's so important for boys when they come on campus that they actually have time to celebrate and to enjoy what it means to be a boy. And I know that our sister schools feel the same thing. And then outside in the world, there's all these other pressures that can come, you know, and are associated with what does it mean to be a man or be a woman. And I think people would also be pleasantly surprised to hear how much interface and interconnection and collaboration exists between our schools, our independent schools, so that yes, we have individual and independent missions, but we actually have all sorts of programs and activities that allow the kids to come together and enjoy each other's company in a positive, safe environment. And so, yeah, I think that for me is the big one. I spend a lot of time talking about that when I'm out and about, and I think for some, as I say, some people think about boys' schools as being very traditional. They're not. They're actually very progressive. In my mind, it's why I get up and I love coming to work every day. I deeply, deeply believe the world needs better men now than ever, and that's what our school is in service to.